But what I want you to really see now is I'm going to open up this SD Live Demo 01. We're going to go through this, and I'm going to show you how quickly you can drag and drop and create a WordPress environment is the example we're going to use here. Now WordPress, are you familiar with WordPress? Have you seen it before?
No.
Okay, so WordPress is a blogging information style site. If you go out there and look, if you search WordPress, you're going to find a huge user community out there. It's Linux-based, lots of people use it. It's very handy for creating a website, a very powerful website very quickly. In fact, one of the websites that I serve, The Consumerist, they experienced a data breach, and they rebuilt their site based off WordPress so that they could have more control and more security. So what I'm going to do here is, over on the left-hand side, this is what's known as the catalog. And this catalog has different virtual machines. So when I add the in-gateway firewall and the out-to-the-internet communication, I am adding VMs that do this. Not physical hardware, but virtual machines. So I have the MySQL server, I add our NAS appliance, I'm going to add a web server, and I'm going to add a monitor. Okay? These different elements are going to create a virtual infrastructure that will allow us to have a WordPress site that has dynamic content that pulls that from the database server through the web server. There's it's going to store its information centrally on this NAS device here. It has the file system is moved over there, the logging is moved over there through the CIFS protocol. Then going to communicate back out with our user that's making the request here through the net communication. And then we're going to have the monitor is going to peer in to each one of these servers and be able to pull performance statistics so we can tell what's actually happening there. Now, important things to realize here is this is a zero trust environment. So that firewall is currently defaulted to allow port 80 through. All the other traffic is rejected. So unless you tell it that it's supposed to allow something, it's going to reject it. If you want to run this in a sandbox, basically as a virtual environment all to itself, and you don't want any outside communication, just don't give it external IPs, and you can run it inside, communicate, work with the environment, run the, actually log into the machines through the canvas here, and it never talks to the outside world, which for sandboxing and testing can be hugely important because you never actually expose it to the outside world. So as we go in here, I'm going to show you a few of the configuration screens. You might have noticed that I just cabled everything up here and connected all the data pathways. I was explaining them kind of as I went, but we still have this red exclamation point in the upper right-hand corner. So it's telling us that your in-gateway firewall does not have IP addresses, nor does your communication out to the internet. And your data volumes aren't assigned to your different boxes here, the MySQL, NAS, and monitor. And what we've done is this canvas has already been pre-configured. It already has IP addresses that are globally assigned. And what that means is we've set up a variable, and inside of that variable we went ahead and punched in the IP address. So that means when I go in here, all I have to do is tell it I want to use that existing global variable. Saves me from having to manually punch in the 64.58 addresses for all the different IP addresses. Well, as you can see, I only have to do it a couple places, so why is that important? Well, if it's a larger canvas and you have a lot of IP addresses, or maybe you want to port this in between different facilities and the gateway and the net mask and everything is going to change, you want to be able to update it in one location instead of multiple locations. It'll save you some time and some effort. So that's why we use the global variables, and that's why we're showing it here. In addition, these user volumes that have been set up, they have already been carved up as well, because they take just a couple of minutes to actually format and make that volume available to the canvas. I don't want to waste your time by showing you formatting because that's pretty boring. So I'm going to go in here, and you'll notice that DBase is already assigned here, and then as I go into the NAS value here, I can also just go in and select these. Now you'll notice that as each one of these is selected, that the virtual machine that had a red exclamation point above it is now clearing off, and those exclamation points are disappearing. So at the end of this, we'll have an environment that is ready to start. That big exclamation point that we still see in the upper right-hand corner, it will clear off, and we will actually have the ability to go ahead and start this environment, minus a few other changes that we'll need to make. All right. So red exclamation point is gone. Well, so basically this is saying, this environment is designed to be easy to use. So drag and drop, orchestration layer. We've got templates set up to make it easy for you. We saw the documentation section that's available on the virtual templates that are included. We also have documentation on each of these virtual machines. So if I choose class documentation here, it will show you exactly what this virtual machine is. It'll show you what its functional overview is, what it's designed to do. So this is an Apache web server, and it bears that out here in the middle section. It tells you what versions of the OS that it's running, how much in CPU memory and bandwidth it requires to run, what the default values are. It tells you down below what the terminals are. So, earlier you saw me connecting this up, and you're like, well, yeah, you know how to do this, but that looks like some evil version of Visio that I've never used before, so how do I get this connected up? Well, if you look here, you'll see it explains that why you connect MySQL over to the MySQL box, why you connect FS to the NFS connection. So it gives you all that information. So you don't have to know anything about this environment, and you can go out here and find out everything you need to know. In addition, you can go out here now. You don't have to wait. This environment is available today to you. So if you want to go in here and do your pre-work and figure all this stuff out, go in here and take a look. You can start to learn about this now. And then as we scroll down, you'll see that there's a place for user volumes. There's a place for all the other options that need to be configured. My favorite, because I'm a visual guy, I scroll down here and I can see examples of how to set these environments up. So if I knew nothing else, I could go in here and look at what they've got, learn how to configure this, and through a little bit of trial and error, I could have this up and running myself without any additional help. All right. So we'll go back to the canvas here. We've got this configured, but there's a few other values. These 5 values at the top here make up the 5 tabs that are available as configuration options for the different servers. So as I go in here, I can change the name of it with the first field here. I can change the start order, which is important for dependencies. So if your NAS needs to be available before the web server is, because that's where its data is stored, then set the NAS to a lower number. It'll boot faster, usually 10, 20, 30, 40 are the type of boot orders that you'll use, and the larger the number, the slower it starts. And that allows the dependencies to be established. If we were configuring the in-gateway firewall, there would also be the option for established VLAN tagging in the bottom field there. Resources, you heard me talk about the flexibility, the ability to scale up and scale down the elasticity. Well, that's right here. The default values are what we think it's going to use. Okay, usually used for the calculations you see out on the main dashboard of what this environment will require to run. And then we can establish minimums and maximums, which allow it to float up and down depending on how heavily utilized the environment is. So this allows you to set some elasticity so that your servers don't get overwhelmed. User volumes are contained within the middle section here. You saw me configure those earlier. And then the property values. Things like this little flag here, moving the content on FS, that activates the terminal in the back end and moves the file system over to the NFS volume. So we want that to be on here. So I went ahead and turned that on, and then all the other options that you would normally configure inside of Linux are contained within here, at least the common ones that we would use for a web server. So you'll see if you guys work with Linux already, then a lot of the values are already in here. And then I can make notes like content move to FS. All right, hit OK, and we're done. And all these options exist inside of here. Inside the in-gateway firewall, we've got things like the firewall rules and things like that.